Our a brand new column looks at the reasons why more and more millennials are not moving out and how they are missing out on many of life's milestones. And joining us now, the author, Washington Post opinion columnist Catherine Rampell. Catherine, good to have. There's so many things they're not doing according to this data you discovered.
Oh yes, there are many milestones that my generation is missing out on, at least relative to previous cohorts. We're getting married much less frequently. I mean, even compared to people like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, only about.
What age?
Let's look at these
So,
numbers.
I mean, millennials, it's a fuzzy term. Generally speaking, it's shorthand for like 18 to 35, 18 to 29, people in their 20s. It depends on what, you know, there's no hard and fast cutoff.
And a third are living with their parents right now.
A third are living with their parents.
Okay, yeah, that's
only a quarter were married. About 40% of that same age range, 18 to 35-ish, were married around 2000. So we're definitely having somewhat of a failure.
And they're not getting jobs.
Not getting jobs. Unemployment rates are very high.
Not getting married. They're not getting homes. They're not getting jobs. Obviously, we know the answer here. But this isn't just sort of like a moral societal shift because of cultural things. This is the economy.
Right. I mean, as a somewhat, I don't know, I'm a millennial, I guess, a Gen Y-er, yes.
Yeah.
I guess I fall into that age range. You know, I often hear accusations about my generation as being lazy, as being sort of loose when it comes to
morally
values. Morally adrift. You know, there are all sorts of slurs you can hurl at us. And they are often attributed to the fact that, you know, we don't care about settling down and we don't really want to work, and we don't want to have a home, we don't want all of the things that were part of the American dream for generations past. But actually, if you look at survey data, that's just absolutely not true. The vast majority of young people say that they either are married or those who are not married say that they want to be married. Only like in the single digits in percentage terms do you see that people never want to get married.
Has this been, I'm holding up right now my smartphone. I see this as a big issue, a problem for millennials, starting with even careers. You know, when I grew up, good, better, and different, you went to work for a company, you know, and that was it. And you have so many young people who think, well, I'm going to start an app. Or I'm going to be able to do it from my home.
I think that's a very small share of my generation.
Okay,
they get a lot of press. They get a lot of press.
Maybe it's a lot of press, but I also see what I'll call a learned helplessness, that they read in the papers, like, when I was 24, it was unacceptable to not have a job. You'd hide, whereas today it's like, well, of course I can't find a job, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it's almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I think those kinds of accusations are made against every generation of youth that enters the labor market during a bad economy, that it's like, oh, well, they just really don't want to work, or it's not stigmatized enough to not work.
Not that they don't want to work, but they accept it. And I always say to young people, there are jobs. You're hungry, there are jobs. May not be the job you want, may not be the job that you think you're qualified. If we lined up 10 people and you showed me the most aggressive to the least aggressive, that most aggressive will somehow find a job. So it's harder, it's more difficult. I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man, but we all see it. With tenacious kids, they can make it happen for themselves.
Well, you do see a lot of young people who are taking jobs that require skills below what their actual level of training is. I mean, you see a lot of underemployment in addition to high unemployment, meaning that kids who I say kids, but they're adults, depending on what terminology you want to use, but people who went to college, who've taken on, you know, over $100,000 in student debt, who are working at Starbucks, who are working in retail. They're working in a lot of jobs that don't actually require the credentials that they've you know, taken on a lot of debt in order to obtain.
So what are the implications then for our society if you have this huge generation, a chunk of people who've come up sort of a little bit disillusioned, not being able to find the job they want or live the life they want to live?
Are we going to see this shift?
What does that mean culturally? What does it mean for the country?
You see a lot of disaffection politically. If you look at statistics about trust of government institutions and other institutions, you know, whether it's churches or schools or police or whatever, you see very low levels of trust, which could potentially turn into lower voter turnout rates. I mean, we already have relatively low voter turnout rates, but young people generally do. They don't vote in very high numbers. But, you know, that could translate to all sorts of behaviors later in life that are related to this sort of feeling of isolation and the world has given up on us. They're blaming, they're blaming me for not having a job, for not being able to afford a home, when actually I want all of those things that previous generations
So, Catherine,
wanted.
when you first came on the show a few years ago, I remember you saying you like your boyfriend a lot. What's on your hands? I don't think this story applies
Nice
to you,
ice.
young lady.
That's a nice
Nice
boyfriend.
ice.
This does not apply to you.
I got married 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
So
Wow.
I am one of the exceptions in my generation.
2 weeks happily married. What's the secret?
What's the secret?
Yeah,
I've been trying to make it work. You're
have a job.
Have a job. That really helps. I mean,
Okay.
it's truer for men than for women. I mean, the people who have had the biggest drop-offs in marriage rates tend to be less educated men who have fewer job opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's why I think in some ways marriage is
outlook.
right. Well, it's outlook. It's about, a lot of other factors in your life that make it easier or harder for you to develop other relationships.
To
in
have
your
those
life.
milestones. Catherine Rempel, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
I'm
Good luck
so
with that
happy
mountain also
for
that you're
you.
climbing.
Okay, still ahead, we'll take a look at some of the brightest young minds shaping the world of tomorrow. But first, at the age of 12, she learned she would be robbed of her hearing and sight. Rebecca Alexander's inspiring story of overcoming adversity is next, and not just having to deal with being Peter's sister. No, she's dealt with more than that. But that's a tough one. We'll be right back with more Morning Joe.